one thing?
Please.
I just want to welcome Nico coming to the group. Welcome to Nico. She's a brand new person on our Japanese program, and the people at Share haven't met her yet. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that we have a new member of our team, and welcome to Nico. Thank you so much for coming today, and we're excited to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm excited too.
Good. Okay, great. All right. Thank you, Rich.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. And yes, if we have new folks here, I will do a little bit of a recap from last week. But first I have to do the housekeeping stuff. Just so you know, this meeting is being recorded, so it will be made available. But if you don't want to be seen, feel free to turn your camera off. We will be taking some question and answer breaks in the middle of me going on and on. But if you do raise your hand, if you know the Zoom hand raising thing, feel free to use that, or just wave or just break in, that's fine too. And so we, in a moment, as I mentioned, will recap last week. And we're going to go over what your homework assignment was from last week. And then we'll get into production basics, which is the meat of all of this. And there are some folks still trickling in here. So for those of you just arriving, hi, welcome. I'm Rich. And again, we're going to talk a little bit about what we talked about last week, go over the homework assignment a little bit, talk about production basics, and then we'll get into the art of the interview, which is usually when we do some relaxation techniques and some enacting exercise. However, in the age of Zoom, I thought it'd be interesting, and I haven't tried this yet on Zoom, but to try one of those acting exercises as a warm-up, a way to loosen up. This is something that's used in improv and theater groups, but also as a kind of an icebreaker for corporate meetings and that sort of thing. So for all I know, you've all done this one already, but I don't know if you've tried it on Zoom. So I just wanted to give this a shot, and you're my test group for this. So we'll see how this goes. The one I picked for this is really the only one I could modify for Zoom that I know of. And I've always referred to it as Magic Christmas. It's also called What Is It, which is really more descriptive of how this works. And here's how it goes. I'm basically going to do a little mime kind of thing. So you will see me act out an object, and I'll wait for one more person to pop in who is joining us right now. What you'll see me do is I'm going to try to mime the object. You'll figure it out. And then typically, if we were doing this in a group, the person that shouts it out, that figures it out, goes next. So I would throw the imaginary object to them, and then they would come up with another object, and we'd have to guess what they're doing. So I'm going to start as soon as one more person gets in here. Hi, welcome. We're about to do an acting exercise, and I'm going to turn off the slideshow here so you can see me better, I think. So can everybody see me?
Yes.
So
Yes.
Since I can't see all of you at the same time or see necessarily who shouts it out, but feel free to try, but I might just throw it to the next person that I see on the screen. So here's the first one. Ready? No talking.
It's raining.
Umbrella. Umbrella.
Oh, umbrella. Okay, Jill technically got it. So Jill goes next.
I'm always that annoying person in class. Okay, here's mine.
Throw a ball.
Yes, you next.
Kiss. Throw a kiss.
Smoking.
Yes, who said that?
But I love the kiss answer, though. That was a positive answer.
Yes.
Phone?
Cell phone?
Yeah.
Interesting. When you're my age, phones didn't do that.
Yes.
You're doing a whole like,
I have an easy one. Okay.
okay.
Brushing your teeth?
Brushing your teeth.
Who said it first?
I think it was Jenny.
Jenny? Yeah.
Okay. Mm. Banana.
Bananas.
Oh,
That's right.
very good.
Who said it?
Kate.
I knew that.
Kate said it.
Let's see.
Beer. Pouring.
Drink.
Drinking.
Wine?
Glass.
Yeah.
Was that Christine who got it?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, your turn.
okay.
Eating corn.
Nice.
What?
Well done.
Okay.
Hey, Gwen?
Dancing.
Dancing?
Yes.
Ah,
Who's that,
is
Fran?
that Aniko?
No, Nanika.
Yes.
Nanika.
Yes.
Nico.
That's me. Okay.
Brushing your teeth.
Brushing teeth.
Right.
That's a good one.
Okay, so that's me. So here's one.
Does the dog bark sound effect have anything to do with it?
Not really.
Toasting.
Yes.
Oh, toasting. Oh, right.
I think Fran wants to do one.
Fran, do it.
Waving.
I can't see.
Driving.
Fran, say something so I can see you.
Yes. Bye.
There you are.
Hey, goodbye. Oh, that's good. Ivis.
I'm trying to get on. Hold on.
Oh.
Surprise?
Who's that? Who said that?
I think it was me, but I went already, so I'll pass it over to Arlene.
And then let's make this the last one. We'll wrap this up with Arlene. Arlene, where are you?
In the
There.
dark.
Next to you.
The dark.
I don't know why it's so dark. I have lights on anyway.
We'll talk about all that later.
Putting on a necklace.
Nice. Well done, everyone.
All right.
So you get the idea. And the idea is that's something that, again, you can use to warm up a group, or even if you're working with somebody and you're interviewing them and they're stiff as a board, that's one way to just get people loosened up a little bit. So you're welcome to give that a shot. But I really just wanted to test it. And as I said, I've never tried it on Zoom before. So I think it works pretty well in this age as well. So that's a good one. There are lots of others. And if you just do some research, I'm sure you'll find some other ideas. And those are mostly used for, as I said, improv and theater groups. But that's one of the acting exercises when I'm directing that I use with actors, either for interviews, but more likely for like a group activity, like on stage. So now let's talk about last week. So to recap last week, when I click the right button, we talked about what makes a good story, to make sure that you focus on your objective when you're coming up with an idea for a video, which is what we're talking about here, to be able to really focus on what is the point of that story. Why are you making this video in the first place? What is your objective? Can you boil the whole thing down into one sentence? That's leads you to the treatment, which was our homework assignment. It's a good place to start your treatment. It's probably the name of your piece, or you could be using a working title. It might not be the name yet, but it's probably that first nugget of what it's really about. We also talked about story structure, how every good story has a beginning, middle, end. Keep that in mind as you're building your video. What is the beginning? Where is the middle? What's happening in the middle? And how are you going to end the piece? And also very important, know your audience for a lot of reasons. Your target audience helps determine, obviously, what is going to be in your story, but also how they might be watching it. So that might help you determine what you end up making and the format of it. And that could mean that some people are watching it on mobile devices in different ways. So we'll talk about all that stuff today. We also last week talked about phase 1 of the production process, which is pre-production. So we went over how to do your research, and we'll get into a little bit of that more today. And then we went right into writing a treatment. So you had a template for how to structure a treatment, starting with that boiled down sentence that you already determined. And that was your homework assignment. So a lot of you sent me some things, and I got back to you with some feedback. And we can talk a little bit about that in a minute. Then again, last week we went into a little bit about scripting, and the format that I mostly use is the 2-column style. One side is the visuals, the other side is the audio, which is really your narrative, the person speaking for an interview, or if it's somebody like just one narrator, that's their entire narration. And I briefly just mentioned the storyboard for the visual folks out there that need to see everything put in visual format. It could be stick figures, or you could get really fancy. And now back to your homework assignment. So treatments, generally, how did everybody do? I'd say 5 or 6 of you sent me something, unless I got things later I didn't see yet. But shout it out. How did it work? I mean, were there things that you wish you had known when you started tackling this? Or did you just feel like you dove right in and were able to take your story idea, boil it down to that one sentence, and then start to write the concept of how you plan to make it? Anyone? Well, we did have one example that we did start to work on, and that would be Desiree's project. And I know you're in here somewhere, Desiree. We didn't have a chance to chat as we started to work on yours. Was there anything that you wanted to share?
I would basically say that this was a jump in the pool moment for me, in the sense that I missed the first lesson. And then, you know, we got together and we did a lot of talking. It was all interesting what we did, but I had no preparation, no thought. It was just on the spot. So I don't have much else to say at this time.
Okay, well, what that was an exercise in, you got to see how I would approach it with a client, so that you could actually see the kind of questions that I would ask, so that I know what to put in my notes that eventually funnels into that initial document, the treatment. But since we didn't have a chance to talk ahead of time, I didn't have it, the version that I sent prepared here, but I don't know if you had a chance to look at it, or if you would be comfortable sharing it with the group.
Now, you sent it to me in email? Because I don't have it on the device that I, if you did, I did not see it.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Okay, then I'm not really gonna share that here, unless Jill, unless you felt like it would be a good place for other people to see how that went. Oh, did we lose Jill?
Jill, you're on mute.
You're on mute, Jill.
Oh, there you are.
Oh, sorry. Yes, I said I think we can work around it, Rich. And does somebody else have a treatment that they submitted that they'd feel comfortable having us talk about?
I submitted one.
Great. Let's look at Jenny's.
Do you happen to have it, Jenny? Are you able to share?
Yeah, let me just make the screen smaller.
I can say that with Desiree's video, that was the first time that I'd been involved in the treatment process, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought it raised a lot of questions and certainly helped frame the beginning, middle, and end part.
Okay, I'm opening it. Okay, it's open. Go back to this. Share screen. Oh, you have to, it says here, host disabled participant screening.
Yeah,
So you'll have to enable my screening.
Looking for that.
The host might have to share, make her a co-host or pass the host along. Who's the host of this?
Yeah, I did. Jenny, I just made you the host.
Okay.
And you should be able to share.
Very good. All right, here we go. All right, there it is. Can everyone see it?
No. There.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Okay. So, in the first training that we had, I already knew what I wanted to do my video on. So it's just a matter of my thinking about what I wanted to include in this video. When I received Rich's comments, I realized I had left two things out, which I already had thought of, but I didn't write them. Those are the two things that you mentioned about my incorporating a photo or maybe an interactive piece within the video, which I would like to include. So anyway, this is, do I have to read this, or are you going to read this for me?
Well, we can only see the first part, it looks like.
Yeah, Jenny, I think if you don't mind reading it, that'd be great.
Okay. All right. So, treatment proposal. The benefits of having a dog through illness. Background. Dogs are not just pets. And if you've ever gone through a serious illness, you learn that having a dog is beneficial to your physical and mental well-being. They are the best medicine, helping one through the healing process. In addition, they offer companionship and comfort. It's been proven that having a dog lowers stress levels, and I have to make this bigger because my eyes are bad. Lowers stress levels and blood pressure, increases physical activity, in parentheses, walking the dog, which improves cardiovascular health and emotional well-being. In almost every hospital, you'll find a dog therapy program available to inpatients. Having the responsibility of caring for a dog is a good distraction from constantly thinking about one's current health concerns. While some dogs have been trained to actually detect potential health problems, they can also be very intuitive and sense their own owner's undetected health issues. In addition to reducing depression, they're entertaining, invoking laughter. Moreover, dogs are great protectors, giving warning if danger is imminent. Lastly, and more importantly, is the unconditional love you receive from a dog. That was my background. My concept. I'll be interviewing my sister Shirley Pacheco, a two-time breast cancer survivor with multiple serious comorbidities who has had dogs in her life for the past 30 years. She will be sharing her experience in a no longer than a 3-minute video of how she's gotten through various illnesses and surgeries with the help of her beloved dogs. Initially, Shirley did not anticipate the important role of her dogs would play in the event of illness because at the time, she loved and viewed them only as pets. This will be a 3-minute video for posting on social media. As soon as the video is complete, it should be uploaded perhaps by September. In summary, at a time when someone is diagnosed with a serious illness, their emotions and mind become overwhelmed with fears and concerns for their health. That being said, having a dog can alleviate the stresses that accompany a life-threatening disease and lead to a better health outcome.
Nicely done.
That was good.
This idea has everything. The emotional impact, everybody is immediately going to relate to, obviously, the pets, going through something with a pet. So it's a great idea for a video, and I'm excited to see it get into production. The background section, that's awesome. That a lot of this now, in this case, is probably for you. The treatment is for you. It's the document you're going to use as an outline to get started and then to refer back to figure out some things about the concept, like where you might have added some notes that maybe you forgot about as you get into production. And then the summary really can be a way to wrap up the whole video. That's why you put the thought into that, which is sort of like writing an essay. It's reiterating, say, those like the 3 points or whatever you make in an essay, and then you come back to it again and you reiterate that and wrap the whole thing up. Sometimes you'll find in a project like this, you're looking for a way to end it because, we don't end, we keep going. So we have to figure out where this story needs to stop. So that's a great way to refer back to how to wrap the whole thing up. So that's why you put that little extra thought into the summary. So I would work on expanding the concept a little bit. A lot of the details, would you expect to do this as an interview, back and forth kind of interview thing? Would you expect to be in it yourself? There's 2 different forms of documentary that I'd like to talk about real quick, as this is the documentary style. And that's something, and again, forgive my French, we refer to as cinema verite versus direct cinema. Cinema verite is the idea that the filmmaker puts themselves into the film. So you could be part of it. If you're actually asking the questions and like it's an intimate, relation of yours, that it makes sense for you to possibly actually be featured in the video itself. We call that cinema verite. You're sort of truth in cinema. You're almost instigating the motivation of what's happening in it. So that's a way to think about maybe approaching this. The direct cinema way is the objective camera. It's just there, and the filmmaker is completely out of it behind the scenes. Even the questions you may be asking get cut out. They're really just a prompt. And again, we'll talk about the art of the interview in a little bit. So I would expand that a little bit as far as how you intend to present this. And also the idea that this could be, you could shoot this in one shot and be done. There's a lot here. There's ways you could actually incorporate, have the dog in the shot the whole time and let that be the video. So that in that case, there's no editing. I mean, you literally just are shooting that one clip of video for 3 minutes and boom, you're done. And that's perfectly acceptable, especially these days with social media. A lot of things are that way. If you're taking it into the post-production phase, then you need to start thinking about those photographs that may not be readily available that otherwise could just be her holding it up in the same shot. That could be cut in later. And then you think about when you start, this could go in the timeline, when you start collecting those photos, gathering maybe some home video, even considering shooting some more, you know, getting some shots later on, walking around, playing with the dog, you know, all the stuff that goes into pet care. And I mean, there's a lot to consider as far as that goes. And I would think about that and really expand that concept. So that'll help you get started on what to do next and how to shoot it. Nicely done.
Thank you.
I can see a lot of thought has already gone into this. So that's a great example, and everybody can start thinking, those of you that already sent me the ones, again, I'm excited to see them all get into production. So
should I stop share?
Oh yes, please. Yeah, I'll go back to my,
okay.
Let's see if I can pop back over to host disable screen share.
My sister and I are really excited about doing this. When we were younger, our bathroom was the dark room. So we used to do a lot of photography and developing pictures. Yeah. So yeah, this is going to be a fun project.
I think now you might have to hand it back to me so I can share my screen.
Okay, so how do I do that?
Is there a little more next to my name on the participants?
Invite, it says.
Jenny, I think if you click the participants button,
right,
you'll see a list. You'll see his name, and then there should be like a little arrow, and then you'll click make host.
Okay, this is more.
Right. It's in that more thing.
Make host. There you go. Do you want to change the host? Yes. There you go.
I am now the host. Thank you. And we're back. So, so that's a great recap and a inspiration, I think, for everybody else to start to think about their treatments and to keep moving on in the treatment process, and then the scripting process would follow. But now we want to talk about the actual production part of it. When it comes time to shoot, and that means I have to move some things out of my way. All the things that we do during the production phase to achieve, there's that other French word from last week, mise en scène, that will captivate, delight, and otherwise satisfy our viewers. So remember, mise en scène from last week means put on stage. In film and video, it refers to everything that appears before the camera. It's how the scene is designed in a way to tell your story. And that includes lighting, the setting, colors. You can think about populating your scene with various color schemes that motivate and make sense to you, or just are pleasing. Mise en scène includes the subject or the characters or the people in the film, and all the things they're doing, body language, their facial expressions, gestures, costume, hair, makeup, even props. Also, it includes angles. And by that I mean high angle, which means you would be standing above somebody, filming down on them. And there's motivations for reasons to do that in drama, like in film. Sometimes you'll see that make the subject appear, smaller or weaker. The low angle makes the subject appear stronger and more important. But we're mostly going to focus on the flat angle, which is basically eye level. Most of what we're going to be doing is that kind of angle. And then mise en scène also includes framing. And so you've probably heard wide shot, close up, medium shot, all those things, industry terms. You can even use them in your script if you so wish, and we abbreviate those WS, MS, and CU for close-up, of course. So, camera technique. We begin to achieve our mise-en-scène through our technique. Now, this applies to filmmaking with a smartphone, as many of you will most likely be doing, or mobile device of some kind, laptop. And that is the primary goal here. We want you to come away from these sessions knowing how to record well-lit video, well-planned interviews using your smartphone's mobile devices. And if that is your approach you'd like to take for your video project, that is perfectly fine. That is the goal for these sessions. Camera technique with a smartphone begins with how to hold my smartphone. So when I use my smartphone to film something, and I have plenty of times, and it's actually ended up on television, believe it or not. How do I turn my phone? Do I turn it horizontally? When do I do that? Well, in my case, and hopefully in yours, almost always. Why? Because when viewers create content vertically, the landscape sometimes gets lost in translation. If you've ever seen Lawrence of Arabia, do you remember those sweeping vertical views of the desert? No, because there weren't any. The blockbuster hit was filmed in Jordan, Morocco, and Spain in super wide Panavision to capture the sweeping horizontal landscape. Just imagine what would have happened during that famous duel if an onlooker had used his smartphone to record the event by focusing solely on Hamilton. Fortunately, someone had the forethought to turn their smartphone horizontally, so that today we all know the perpetrator was Aaron Burr, of course. And then when we transformed our digital landscape a dozen or so years ago and evolved to high-definition television, by then we were all accustomed to a horizontal view of the digital world. Until, well, yes, smartphones. The real ones in present day, not the made-up ones in the previous slide. For some reason, people started filming the way they were holding their phones to talk and scroll through their news feeds and swipe left and all that. So finally, YouTube gave up and made it possible to display YouTube videos vertically. And it turns out that's all good, except when people submit their vertical video to broadcast news, then you end up with those blank bars on either side. So all of this means you need to know your audience. And that's something we talked about last week as well. And one reason you need to know your audience is so that you know how they'll be viewing their content. So after all that, if you're still not sure which way to hold your camera phone when you're filming the project you're about to work on, then just turn it horizontally. So unless you're absolutely sure, the only way your video will ever be viewed is by other people who are going to watch it vertically. And if it's not going to be edited with other video or photos or graphics, most of which are probably landscape. So my advice is just hold it horizontally, sorry, meaning the landscape view. Like that. So we're also now going to talk about camera placement. And all this applies to smartphones as well as laptop webcams. Earlier I mentioned angles, high, low, and flat. Flat meaning eye level. You want to make sure your camera is straight on to the subject's face, whether that's someone you're interviewing, or it might be you talking to the camera. Typically, it means you'll need to raise up the camera, often by piling up some books. Some people have those smartphone stands. You might have to raise that up on books too. If you're interviewing someone on Zoom, you'll have to give them a heads up that you'll need to spend 10 or even 20 minutes sometimes getting this right. Carefully view the background behind your subject, or yourself if you're the one being recorded. Try to limit the objects in the background. Simpler is better. If there are photos they really want to include, chances are they won't be that visible, but if you can make it work, great. Just remember, you want to focus on your subject. You want the focus to be the subject, not the background. And as for your light source, make sure it is behind the camera. That is, in front of your subject, not behind. Which brings us to lighting. Here we see the one source method. Windows work great. in this example, we see a relatively large window with bright sunlight diffused by window treatment, courtesy of my wife. I couldn't really tell you what that thing's called, but you know what I mean, that kind of diffuse drapery. That always works great. But if the window is too bright and the webcam or the smartphone camera just couldn't adjust without making the surroundings too dark, then the subject's face would be too bright. So in this case, I moved back to the sweet spot that you see there, which gives the subject's face a nice even lighting. And if a window is not available, then yes, you can use a lamp. Make sure it's placed behind the camera and that it lights the subject evenly. Sometimes it helps to diffuse lamplight by placing a cloth over it or in front of it if it gets too hot. You don't want to melt the cloth. If the one lamp just isn't working well, maybe it's not strong enough or it's too harsh, so you have to move back and there's no room to move back, you may be able to introduce a second light. So single light source versus 2-point lighting. To review, the single source could be daylight or a lamp or a ring light, as some of you may have seen in use these days, which is that second photo from the left. Or if you're introduce a second light source, as the third photo is doing, that could be 2 lamps. Or in the last photo, the one on the right, that's technically 2-point lighting, a window light plus a lamp. So real quick, 2-point lighting consists of the primary light source, or key light we call it, and that's the more intense light. And then the second light we call a fill light, which cancels out the shadows created by the key light. So you place that opposite the key light, and it's usually not quite as powerful as the key, so that one side of the face is a little shadowier compared to the other side, but it's still relatively even. It just gives some depth to a face. And then if you're really ambitious and maybe you're thinking about a career as a lighting director, you add the backlight. So that's 3-point lighting. And that's how every person in a studio is lit. But back to our digital virtual world of more likely single point or single source lighting. But here's some other tips. Avoid reflective blinds, reflective surfaces. Dark finishes, warmer wood grains are preferable. Avoid glass tables, walls to reduce glare. Avoid small, intricate graphic patterns. And then if you happen to have the kind of video in the works that would include like a logo, if you're using the Share logo and you have one, and you want that in the shot, it's best if it's a non-reflective surface, so that you're not fighting reflection and trying to move it, spending a lot of time trying to get that right. Back to a few words about camera placement. Tilt for headroom. You just want to see a little above the top of your head or your subject's head. You don't want half the image to be wall and ceiling. The subject should be close enough for decent audio. And speaking of audio, in addition to having the subject close to the camera microphone, try to cancel an echoey large room by choosing a different room. Preferably one with carpeting, cushions, drapes, blankets all work. That all soaks up echoes, makes the sound warmer and a little closer. It's great if those kinds of things are all around the person speaking, but at least make sure that those things are in front of them to soak up the sound. So in this case, in this room, there's more of the same on the opposite side. If that wasn't the case, I would turn this around if I was recording, say, myself with that laptop, so that the audio I was projecting went into those cushions to soak up the sound. Also, real quick, if you have an external mic for your smartphone or your laptop, that definitely would improve audio. And I have a list of recommended brands. If you're interested, you could ask me later, but they're obviously not necessary to make a good video. The other things we talked about are making sure you are close enough to the mic is the best thing. So that's my little spiel on that. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? And again, you can just shout out or raise your hand. I'm not seeing any hands pop up.
I have a question.
Oh, yes.
I have already sent to the chat, but regarding a table, you said the darker table is better. It's not, white table is not better than that darker table.
The darker, I meant background, like.
How about the table?
So in your shot, well,
yeah, because if we use a white table, we can expect some kind of reflection of the kind of white color. What do you think?
Awesome point. Yes. In fact, is that how you're lit right now? Is that what you're using right now to reflect?
No. Well, I put that. No, my table is dark, but yeah.
Actually,
I use a light.
That's a great trick, though. What you bring up, and it looks like that's what's happening. As a matter of fact, it's reflecting up at you. That's the old Katie Couric trick. She always had light down here. So, for example, if you can see right now, I've got a piece of paper.
Right.
I have in this room. It's just a bright room, and I'm not going by the best example here because I didn't really light myself for this. I probably should have, but this is acceptable. However, if I didn't have another light source, let's see, I've got one here. That doesn't help much. I'm not sure I like that. So I like your idea of letting your table that your laptop is on act as a light, as a fill light source. So I've got overhead lighting in here. Doesn't help that I'm wearing a hat because that's shadowing my face. So if I let that overhead lighting bounce off the reflector by putting that paper under here, I can actually put a little bit of fill light on me, which you may be able to see there. And if I had more paper, I could increase that. So as long as that's off camera, that's a good way to add that fill to get rid of some shadows. If you're, not happy with a shadowy look and you haven't been able to use a light source to get rid of those shadows, using bounce cards would be great. Got some in here somewhere that are much bigger. And they work too, as this is what we use in the field. Just a big piece of cardboard, what do you call this stuff? Not Bristol board. I always forget the name.
Stock card?
That works, sure. Anything like this, that makes a great reflective surface. So in the case
I spent a lot of time holding those for Rich, just saying.
Yeah, that's Steve's. In fact, this might have been our last shoot. I wrote some stuff. Did I use this for something? So if I had a light, again, I'm using the overhead light now. And if I didn't have the hat on and a shiny forehead, I'm relatively evenly lit just by placing that white card, letting that bounce light. So that's a great trick. Thank you for bringing that up.
Of course.
Actually need to add that to my notes. But as far as, I think what I was talking about was using non-reflective surfaces and warmer colors, warmer wood as your background, to the things behind you. And again, this isn't, I'm not preaching or practicing what I'm preaching here because I have a very bright room. This is just my office studio. So I like it for the brightness, but when I'm in here working, all these lights go off and it's much darker when I'm actually working in here.
Right.
Rich, can you talk about what to look for in lighting? Because I think people don't really understand, perhaps. I mean, I didn't understand this when I was first trying to learn about lighting, like exactly what to look for, like shadows under the nose or under the eyes, or how a side light will put half of your face in shadow and how to correct that. And maybe just by looking at the faces on here, you could show us some examples Like to me, like Deb Hackenberry looks really well lit right now. I'm looking at thumbnails. I can't really see very closely. She looks like she has a beautiful soft light on her right now. I don't really see any shadows.
Let's see if I can see Deb.
Not to put you on the spot, Deb, but you do have nice lighting on you.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, but a reflective surface behind her, which we don't want.
Right, right.
No, I'm facing a window. That's the light that's
Okay.
coming.
So yes, so let's use Deb as an example then. Right, so you and I have to deal with glasses. So if we're filming ourselves, and we love the big light source in front of you, and I tend to use that too. If I turned around and made those windows back there my light source, but then I'd be dealing with that same kind of the reflection. The trick when we're stuck with that, we usually say, if you tilt your glasses a little bit, does that take it off? That may or may not work. Usually what we do, sometimes we'll like tilt them so that they raise up above the ear a little bit. If it's a huge window source and that still doesn't work, then we always say, can you see without your glasses? I'm afraid that's the only trick I have up my sleeve in that case. And you know why? Because it always works. I mean, either if we're using a teleprompter and the camera's like way back there and they need to read the prompter and they say, no, I can't see without my glasses, then we try that other trick. And sometimes we'll even have like like a grip on set, or somebody take some tape and stick it back there. But you can only tilt your glasses so far before it starts to look ridiculous, and then it's not the answer either. In that case, we always tell people, please go out and just buy prescription non-reflective glasses with the coating. So like if it's a CEO that we're filming all the time, they already did that. But most times you're stuck with it. So in this case, we're all like, pretty close to the camera. So chances are you're going to be able to see without and may not even need glasses on. So.
Hi, Rick.
Yes.
Hi. Hi, everyone. Two questions or a few questions. One, when you're filming outside, do you have any suggestions for that? Two, what colors do you suggest that would maybe come out better on camera? I've heard different things about white. I used to be a chef, so I would wear these white coats when we were filming stuff on the Food Network, and sometimes it was fine, sometimes it would blur you out, as you were mentioning before. And also, could you talk a little bit about lighting in terms of when you're for different complexions as well?
Yes, so outside, first of all, if you are able to be in shade on a sunny day, you want to make that light as even as possible. If you're in bright sunshine and there's no trees around you and it's a really bright day, then you're dealing with all kinds of glare and shadows, and it might seem ideal because it's beautiful out. But when you go to start filming, again, a lot depends on the equipment. If you're using your smartphone, these things are pretty smart. And so you're able to adjust for a lot of exposure. Like if you are in the camera mode and you hold down that area, you click and hold, say, the area of the face, it'll lock in that exposure. So it'll expose for your face, but then if you're in a nice shaded area, but everything behind you is really bright, it's going to expose for your face if you lock into the face, and you want that. You want the face to look good, obviously, that's your subject, but then it's going to make the background blow out. It's all going to be really like too bright. So either live with that. That's a style some people are fine with. But most times you need to move your location. So you want to be in an area that's evenly lit all the same. So if it's a sunny day, find a shady spot so you can get that, glare off the face, or the harsh shadow on one side, or too bright. It's just easier to deal with if you're all in a shady spot and everything you see in the background is in that same shady spot. So if you're outside under a, I don't know, on a patio, under an umbrella or something. And that's taking care of the shade on the face, but beyond that, it's too bright. Just try to turn again. So maybe get to an area where there's trees and shadow, you know, just try to keep the values the same throughout that shot. That takes a care of a lot of the glare issues and having to deal with too bright versus, you know, darker. And wearing white outside in that circumstance is part of the problem. Again, unless you're able to control the whole thing. White was an issue in my day with old tube cameras and stuff like that, particularly. The same with when I mentioned tight patterns in the background. They used to cause that moire effect. Smart cameras these days, it's much less of an issue. And again, as long as you can control that lighting, you can get away with, you know, wearing white or wearing darker, you know, and these cameras can handle it. So, but that's the trick, is exposing and locking in that exposure. And again, with a smartphone, it's a matter of being in the camera mode. And then most of them, if you just click on the area you want to be exposed correctly, click and hold, it locks it onto that. It locks focus too, so you have to be careful. If you're moving away, you're going to move in and out of focus, so you have to keep that in mind. But if you're just if you're steady and locked off right there, just lock in, lock focus, lock exposure. That it should look okay. For exposing different skin values, again, all I can say at this point, without getting into all the, you know, technical details, these smartphones are smart, so they're probably going to handle and expose correctly once you make sure that that's what you're trying to expose. Otherwise, the camera might be looking at everything and taking an average value of the entire shot, and that's where you get into trouble a little bit. Also, it's like if it starts to go, I think it's supposed to be that. No, I think it's supposed to be this, and you'll see it like waver back and forth sometimes. So that's why I recommend doing that lock, click, and hold for the thing you want to be focused and exposed correctly. If you're shooting a Zoom kind of thing, you have less control because you have less control of these webcams, unfortunately. But whatever you're doing right now, you look great. So nicely done. That's nice, even lighting. Your background is well thought out. Remember, you don't want to light your background so much as the subject. So the only thing I would suggest, if you have room, is to move your whole setup forward so that your background's more, further back.
Thank you. The screen hides a multitude of sins, so that's why it's up.
And that's another great tip too. If you can control your background like that, like if I didn't want to see all the Emmys back there, I would move in a screen. There's something over there, to control your background. But if have the space, you want the background to kind of go out of focus, that works too, because you really want your subject to be what you're really looking at, more first and foremost.
Thank you.
I guess there were some answers in there, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it, honestly, is trial and error. And so I think that's the last thing I'll leave you with. And being inventive, right there, you invented a background. So I don't know. I think that's awesome. You're a little close to your light source right now in your case. So is that a window?
No, it's a light. It's a lamp.
Yeah, I might consider throwing a cloth over it or something to diffuse that light a little bit. But you've got the idea. That single source at that angle like that, you're actually what's called in a chiaroscuro, if you know art, and it's that butterfly effect. You've got the little triangle on, is that your left cheek? Because your light source is that, yeah, point to your left. Yeah, your light source is coming from your right at an angle, so it makes that little light triangle between your nose and your cheekbone. That's optimal. You know, we like that.
I'll take it. Thank you.
And now I just want to say I blathered on a little too long. So I would like to propose that we make next week also about the interview stuff. If everybody's good with that, we can talk a lot more about the art of the interview and all that next week as well. Because I was going to get a little bit into, and I could just start to, I'm just going to throw some of this at you and we'll see how far we get. If anybody has to drop off after the hour, I understand we can revisit this next week. But if those of you that are willing to stick around, I'm just going to plow forward here.
We'll also have the video available. So if you have to drop off, you can always check out the next section on the video.
Cool.
And I think Ivis had a question.
Yes.
Rich?
Yeah, just very quickly, what Lisa had mentioned about the best colors to use, and also with respect to the different colors of our complexion. I know I did a video and I have a lot of yellow undertones. So could a specific color help us with that? And I like color. Or the lighting, because we had this light that I realized was just the incorrect light. So I had my husband go buy daylight lights. Or buying that ring that a lot of people are using. Do you have a few minutes to talk about that?
Sure, yeah. I didn't know how much you would want to get into all this stuff, but I'm happy to talk about it. So, well, you mentioned the ring light. That's the light of 2020. Everybody loves the ring light now. All these YouTubers have forced us to, you know, invent new things. So, yeah, if with a little bit of research, you could easily find. But I think if that's where you want to go, that's a good answer. There's other ones. There's one called the Lume Cube. Some of these, you can change the color temperature of it. So you're talking about color temperature. Just so you know, the old incandescent lights were 3,200 degrees Kelvin. That's that really warm, the reddish kind of, you know, yellow. As you go up in Kelvin temperature, it gets cooler and cooler. By the time you get to daylight, that's 5,600 degrees Kelvin. So that's your range between 5,600, which is the sun, and 3,200, which was the old incandescent light bulbs. And that range in between makes a lot of difference, actually. So if you've found that the warmer lights work better for you, and you've got, say, the Lume Cube that I mentioned, or your ring light, you know, is able to adjust. A lot of them have that little dial wheel, and you can just adjust it. And again, you'll know when you see it what's working. But if you don't have those things, and I don't have those things, there's some old tricks we used to use to trick your camera into changing the white balance. But we're talking about these, you know, shooting with mobile devices. If you've got a camera that you're going to use that can change the white balance on it, then you have to go into that device and tell it. You know, you can make it different. You can take a different white balance, or you can do an old trick we used to use. I don't have one handy. Gels. So you could tell that camera, you know, if you hold a blue gel in front of a white card and press the white balance, you know, you could trick the camera into changing that white balance. So there's a lot of tricks like that. And honestly, I don't know if that's for, you know, what we want to dive into here right now, but with some research, you can probably figure.
Rich, I think if you could just explain, like, less light will make you look more red, more light will make you look more yellow, kind of thing.
Yeah, well, again, it depends on the color temperature.
Brighter light.
Yeah, it depends on the color temperature of the light you're using. So today's lamps, you know, those, and you can buy the light bulb. It literally says daylight on it. Those are the cooler, bluer colors. And if you found through, you know, experience that that's not working for you, try the other, you know, the lower Kelvin lights. But I always go with.
Yep. Sorry to interrupt. I think now, just to make sure everybody gets as much content as possible, maybe we can just go through to the end of what you're planning to show us today, and then we could do questions at the end.
Okay. But I will say, since you popped up on screen there as an example, right now, here are some of the, so you've got that single source light off to your left. That looks great. You're doing the thing I was talking about where it looks like the same thing. You've got brighter on one side of your face, a little bit of fill light on the other side of your face. So that gives some depth and shape to your face. But your backlight is
blown out. Yeah.
Sin. So also the other thing is, I would ask you, if we were doing an interview, to raise that up higher. I still feel like I shouldn't see your ceiling. We don't, you know, again, we're in the age of everybody's shooting their selfies, like, you know, up their nose. And, what have I done? Now I can't see myself. Who knows what you're looking at now? Oh, here. Okay, so yeah, so those are, and I think the handout, did everybody get the handout? I think I had some of that stuff in there too. But all this is in detail. All the stuff I whipped through before addressed a lot of this. So yeah, for now, let me just keep going with the interview part real quick. And then we'll see how far we get here. So interviewing, give yourself time to prepare before the interview. Do the research. And that means searching your subject's bio on their website, their company's website. So many people have LinkedIn bios now. There's mine. You can read all about me on LinkedIn, so that you have something in your head before you even talk to the person, if it's someone you don't know, in advance to talk about. Also consider what it is you'd like them to say in the interview. Try to anticipate their answers, and that will help you determine their questions. As I mentioned before, the techniques we use to try to relax some people is, first of all, giving yourself the time to get to know them before you even meet them, so that you may have something that you can chit chat about. And then when you do meet them, if it's someone you don't know, you can start talking about something that they're going to want to talk about. So, you know, you might say, hey, by the way, congratulations on that Emmy you won last week. And then they would say, oh yeah, that old thing, that was nothing. But I have to say, I you know, really worked, you know, so that gives you something to just chat about. But if they are just frozen, and this is one of the, again, we're back to acting techniques. A relaxation exercise, many of you, like me, either meditate or do yoga. So you have that. If you have that in your toolkit, that's awesome. This is one thing that sometimes I use as an acting exercise. It's a relaxation technique that you may be familiar with. You may have heard the Lee Strasberg method. That was encouraging actors to magnify and intensify their connection to their material by creating their character's emotional experience in their own lives. Well, Strasberg developed a relaxation exercise to help them identify unwanted tension in the muscles of their body, including the neck, which is where tension, final, you know, resting place of hidden tension, and the face, where mental tension manifests. So by systematic and deliberate exploration of these muscles, he would identify the tension in each of them and then release that tension through an act of will. I know it sounds easy, right? But you can use this to relax yourself, say, you know, before recording either yourself or before an interview, or actually use it to help relax the interviewee if they are particularly stressed about being interviewed, for example. And real quick, it goes like this. First, you say, raise your arm above your head and begin exploring the tension in the fingers, thumb, and wrist by moving the muscles in these areas one at a time, back and forth in circles slowly, while the mind asks the individual muscle, where is the tension there? And then once the mind has identified that tension, it's simply a matter of willing the muscle to let go. So you're really finding it and then letting it go. And then this process continues throughout every muscle in the hand, arm, shoulder, neck, chest, stomach, hips, upper and lower legs, ankles, all the way down to the toes. So that's one way. Again, many of you may already be doing these things or maybe using meditation, but sometimes I'll actually go through that whole thing to relax a subject in an interview. And real quick, the three-headed alien, what? Okay, so we used to teach that when you're getting ready to interview somebody, you would make sure that you would tell them that we need you to answer in a complete sentence. Okay, say you're interviewing somebody about something that happened in 2014. You tell the person to answer in a complete sentence, and then you ask, in 2014, you had your first encounter with a three-headed alien. What was it like? So at that point, they remember that they were supposed to answer in a complete sentence, so they say something like, in 2014, when I had my first encounter with a three-headed alien, it was really great. And that's it, not much to work with there, right? A better plan is to get in a habit of asking questions that demand a complete answer, questions that are vague, yet going in a specific direction. So what kind of aliens do you think are hanging out here on planet Earth? And they might say, oh, well, all kinds. I mean, I myself have seen 3 different kinds of aliens. And then you're ready to follow up, really? What kinds have you seen? And then they'd say, oh, well, the normal kind like an ET, or the kind with tentacles. Oh, and once I saw a 3-headed alien. Oh, wow, I was really excited about that one. I was driving on the thruway. It was July 3rd, 2014. And, you know, so that you're vague enough, but getting them in the direction you want them to go in, but without starting them off with the whole stiff, remember to answer in a complete sentence, because then they have to remember that and try to remember what they really want to tell you. You want to be more conversational and just get them to get started. They're going to answer in complete sentence, even if they don't start the whole thing off with, in 2014, I saw a 3-headed alien, which, again, we used to try to get first for editing purposes, so that was the first clip and the first part of the edited thing they said. But after a while, we realized, you know what, that's not relaxing anybody. We really just want to get them talking, and you're going to find the gold. You know, they're going to say the thing you want in there somewhere, and then you're going to make it work. So something else to remember, to ask up front, ask your interviewee to say their name. And if it's somebody you're interviewing that you don't know, make sure they say their name, their title, their organization, all that stuff, just so you have it recorded in case you don't know them. Or in some instances, it may be somebody else might be editing this, so just make sure they're identified. Also, it's a chance to get them really to just start talking. And that way you can see what they're going to look like as they're talking, maybe get a sound level if you're recording in something that you can measure with. Excuse me. Oh, also, if your schedule allows, spend a couple of minutes just chit-chatting with them, as I mentioned before, because you've done your research, you know some things about them. Pre-COVID, this was an important part of warming them up. Yeah, it's a little different these days, but it's still important to build a rapport, and maybe in advance of their interview time, if possible, you might have that little chit-chat with them, even on a day before, if you can. But whatever, find some common conversational ground everybody shares at least one thing with everybody else. So really just try to be conversational. So that's all I wanted to say first and foremost. Again, does anybody else have any other questions or any points to make beyond the things that I just said? Anyone? Agnes, I think you're muted. Asking you to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not sure if you had said that Jill's camera was too high, that you were seeing most of the ceiling, because I know mine is just as high and you can see the ceiling. Are you saying that it shouldn't be that high, or that's good, or?
No, camera placement, your camera's too low.
It's too low.
Yeah, so if you can raise your camera so it's more eye level with your eyes.
Okay.
And then the other thing is that on a stand?
Yes.
Are you using one of those stands?
Yes.
Can you rotate it so that it's landscape view?
It goes down too low. Is that?
I think we lost your
Yes,
video.
you did. Yeah. Okay. Wait a minute. I don't know what happened. What happened? Yep, you lost me.
Oh, we can still hear you. Let's see.
You only can hear my voice. No, I don't think it's. I can't rotate it to where I tried, but it's not gonna work. I don't know what happened.
The basic idea is just to be horizontal instead of vertical, sideways, and to have the camera be eye level, right, Rich?
Yes. So again, if you're seeing Jill, I don't want to see her ceiling or inside of her nose. Yeah.
Right.
That's awesome. So that's what I was talking about. And then let me put Jill back on here. So you've got camera placement is perfect. Maybe a little extra headroom, and I would typically tilt down a little more, but you're pretty close there. And again, the biggest thing in Jill's shot is that I would close the blinds in that window more than anything. Or, you could always explore a little bit and try turning left and right and see what you got. But you really want the focus to be on the subject. And you want to see them eye to eye. So think of that. Just keep, make sure you, oh, I think Agnes is back on.
Okay, make sure it's eye to eye. This is too high, so.
Well, it's too low. We're shooting up at you, so you want to raise it up.
Oh, like that.
So that we don't see your ceiling. Yeah, and then tilt it down, but not. Don't go to yeah. And then right now you've got a lot of headroom, so we don't need to see the drapes back there or anything.
Okay.
We just want to see just above. Yeah, there you go. You were close there for a minute. There was that sweet spot where, again, tilt down a little bit. Yeah, something like that. Now, again, because you're currently shooting vertical video, if you knew for a fact that the only people that were going to watch this were going to be people watching it vertically with their phones, then you're fine. But you can't promise that, because if somebody ends up watching this like this on a on a computer monitor, then you get the bars on either side, and I'm like, what? Look out! I think somebody just walked in to your left. Watch out! But I can't see them. Sorry, I can't help you. So I would turn that, you know. Also, if you wanted to send this and be on the news, then they have to deal with that. So there you go. So now you're filling, for the most part, a screen. It's still not, for some reason, it's like a 4:3 ratio, oddly. But at least now we're definitely filling more. Yeah, it's the landscape view is preferable universally. The vertical view, and having said all that, of course, there are tons of music videos already that are strictly intended to be watched on your phone like this.
Right.
And,
Right.
And you know who Halsey did one, and what's her name? You know, all the pop stars now. But if you took that and then you wanted to incorporate that into a project you're working on, that where everything else is landscape, then you're stuck with those, you know, bars on either side of blankness. Again, if you're editing it and you've got all these other videos from other people, then you make it work. You put one on one side and one on the other. But just be aware that, you know, you're sort of trapping yourself into only being able to shoot it like that and view it like that, because YouTube does now make it so that it'll adapt to the phone like this. But if you're watching it on your desktop, you're going to have those bars on either side. So if you can shoot it horizontally, I would recommend that still. Maybe in the next year or 5 or 10 years, that'll change. But, you know, we'll all be using different devices by then. Who knows? We'll all be holograms. I don't know. For now, I would just recommend shooting at landscape and getting that ceiling out. And that goes for yourself if you're if you're recording yourself and it's just you talking, and also for say you're interviewing somebody. And then if you go back over this recording and want to go through all that again, it's all in there.
Yeah.
Talked about all that stuff. Okay.
Deborah Brandt has a question.
Deborah. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I accidentally just muted you after asking you to unmute.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just a little bit confused because there's from last week there are 2 columns with the interviewer asking the question and what the person says, and then you're talking about is an interview the interviewee, and I lost you. I don't know where you are. Is it improvisational, like what the person is going to say? Oh, there you are. Or is it scripted for an interview?
No, for an interview, if you're using the 2-column script for that, typically I wouldn't even start writing in that form until after the script. I think Kevin mentioned last week that is, once you've got the interview shot, then you'll know what to put in. Then you're going to start to figure out.
I see. That's what it's for. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. In that case.
I see.
And I think I mentioned last week too, a lot of what he and I do are quick turnaround projects. We skip over that script in an interview kind of project. We're going to start by, once we've recorded the interview, we just go back and start editing it, because we don't have time to do any of the other stuff that I'm talking about in between. So we're not even using the script in an interview at all. But if you're not hard pressed for time, it's a great way for you to start to visualize, what this is going to look like by putting the parts of the interview, the answers that you want to use, into that script form, because then you'll have that as a narrative, and then you can visualize what's going to go in the visuals. It might be just the person talking and you just say that, or it might be where they're talking about something specific and you have a photo of it, then you can write that in that frame to cover that.
It's for editing, really, not for
not for planning. Yeah, it's for editing. Here's an example for a video that Rich and I made back when I had an agency, and it was a client of mine. we wrote out the whole script because we had 5 main bullet points that had to be included in the video. So we had to take a look at the interview to make sure that we had all of those 5 points covered when we did the edit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, most of the projects we do work on are scripted. The interview part might not be. So you might have all the stuff in the script that is leading up to the interview, and then we have a soundbite from somebody. And so in that particular frame, it might say, I know they started with, last week I saw a 3-headed alien, and then I'd write that, and then I'd write ... ellipses. And then maybe I know they ended it with, and it was just before the 4th of July. So I would type that there, just so I know where that's going and what's going to follow it. Then I just continue maybe the narrator's next person to talk in that case. If the entire project is an interview, then yeah, I would use it. You could even use it that way too, with the ellipses, you know, so you get the thought, the main thought for each little frame that you're going to want to have visuals over to go with it, so that you can start to plan out what photos you're going to need, or, you know, where you're going to use that photo in relation to which question. So that, yeah, that's really for you to plan after you shot it. In the scripted format, then yeah, you need to write the script. If the whole thing's going to be a narrator talking about, you know, the subject, that might lead into an interview with somebody, and then back to the narrator again. Yeah, I would definitely write the script out first.
Thanks.
Okay, anyone else real quick? We went well over, but many of you are still here. Thanks for hanging in. Any other questions for now? I'm not seeing any hands waved. So let me just say, so for next week, I did blast through what I was going to say about the some interview tips and tricks. So at this point, as an assignment, what I would love is for you all to start recording something. So if you do a test record, or just record yourself speaking right to your camera, using all those techniques that we talked about today. And feel free to use that handout again. If anybody needs that handout, please email me, let me know. And use that to come back next week with a recorded 30 seconds, 5 minutes, I don't really care. 30 seconds would be good though. As kind of an introduction, maybe try it as the introduction to what your video is about. So maybe it's just that boiled down sentence, and then a little bit about the background, you know, just as something that would be a test to see how your recording skills have already progressed. If you're feeling really ambitious and you're ready to start recording the thing that you're going to put in your project, maybe that's the thing. You're going to just record that first introduction or that first interview, maybe a test interview with somebody. So if you're using your phone to do it, or using Zoom to do it, see if you can come back with something for next week. And if you have any questions in the middle, during the week coming up, again, please feel free to reach out to me. Like if you've decided to record a Zoom interview with somebody and then you don't know how to save it somewhere. I don't know exactly all of your resources. I do know, thank you everybody that registered, you sent me, I know Mac versus PC and all those kind of stats, but if you have access to Zoom yourselves, I don't know if you're able to record with Zoom, if you can use the share account. So that's one option. If you know how to record something with your laptop, like if you have a Mac and you use that photo booth, there's a way to record video on that, but you can't figure out, wait, how do I save this now? Just reach out to me this week. So sound good, everybody? We all good with what we're doing for the week? And then next week we'll talk a little bit about what we did. And then for those of you that are going to move into a post-production phase, we'll talk about some options as far as editing goes. I am actually learning myself that there are some free options that are new that I didn't even know about till recently. So that may be available to people. So we'll get into that next week, but we'll start off with just reviewing what we shot. So we'll mostly be talking about that and going over all this stuff again, because first and foremost, we want to be able to shoot a good video. And again, if that's the end result of this, that's fine too. So we want to make sure it looks and sounds good as well. So I just want to thank everybody again, and we'll see you all next week. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you all.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.